Stephanie, ready? Think. All right.
Green lights are on, so.
The green lights are on. All right. Well, welcome to the 2024 Shawnee County budget hearings. It's July 5th. It's a little after 9 o'clock, and we're going to start off with elections. So take it away, Andrew.
Good morning, Commissioners. We're going to go through the 2024 budget presentation, and then I'm sure you'll have some questions. Again, I won't spend much time on this page. Just a reminder of our mission statement at the election office. I will point out we do have some changes in Shawnee County because of redistricting, and as a result, we're going to spend quite a bit of money this year redoing maps over the next year and a half, 2 years. We now have 4 Senate districts in Shawnee County, and we also have 3 Board of Education districts. Those are the 2 major changes. But because those lines have changed, because the boundaries are different, we have had to split some precincts, then there will be quite a bit of time spent dealing with maps and some cost associated with that. Again, I probably won't go over the rest of this. I think most of you know it, the different districts, but those are the 2 changes that I wanted to highlight. Additionally, we have a little over 115,000 registered voters. Our registered voter numbers in Shawnee County are actually increasing pretty consistently. There was a time when we had 103 registered voters, not long after 2012, 2013. I believe one year we ended up at 103,000. So the workload at the office is up a little bit as a result to go from as low as 103 all the way to 115,000. And I would add, I would not be surprised in preparation or as we get closer to the 24 election that we actually see nearly 120,000 registered voters in Shawnee County. So more engagement, more registration, I think more awareness is driving a lot of that increased workload. If you think about it, that's a little more than 10% increase just in workload, daily workload dealing with registrations. So let's talk for just a second about new state laws. Since 22, there have been a number of state laws that have also increased the amount of things that we have to deal with. Probably not going to spend a lot of time talking about the 22 and 23 or 22 legislation, but just highlight some of the new things that we have to deal with in 23. It's still illegal to accept outside funding from non-governmental sources. Just a reminder, we really can't go looking for additional funds elsewhere. I also would say one thing I do want to say that is good that did happen this year, and it's a fairly small savings, but we'll take wins wherever we can get them in our budget. We do no longer have to record write-ins where people have filed the write-in affidavit. So, having election workers in the back working for 2 or 3 days, we hope that will be significantly reduced by a couple of days, would be my guess. Typically in the larger races. School boards, not so much. Small city elections, I believe, are exceptions to that rule, but it is nice in some of those larger races in the write-ins. If they're not a filed candidate, we're no longer required to record every last one of those. So that's a small change. The presidential preference primary is something new for 2024, so we are going to have to prep right out the gate in 24 for the president. This does have the presidential names only. There are special rules. They're slightly different than all the other primary rules. A special bill was written in the 23 session for this. Most of the hard cost will be covered by the state, fortunately, so there won't be a big impact to the county. The one thing I do want to remind, though, is since we're setting up for so many other elections, I expect there may be a little bit of lagging expense and that there are things that we would normally be doing in January, February, and March that may actually run behind. And if we get crunched enough or there's enough time pressure, we may run into some additional overtime. Again, it's hard to predict exactly, but just a reminder that we typically say 90 to 95% of costs are covered. It's hard to predict how much overtime, with other prepping for the other primary. We may run into a little bit of that. Additionally, there's a law passed that said that we now have to copy hard drives of all election equipment. With 300 or 400 different devices, we're not really sure. Again, I did not put anything in the budget as I just don't know how that's going to be requested to be implemented or what that really means for the office. So just something to be aware of. We're not aware of anything at this point in time, but it is a new law, and we don't know yet what to expect and how that's going to get implemented. Just a quick rundown, looking at trends generally for early voting. You know, quite frankly, 2020 was such an anomaly, and it's right in the middle of my graphs. It's kind of hard to account for some of that, but I think I would say this, that generally, as a general rule, nearly 75% of all voters vote at their polling place. My interaction with most of them has been that they like it, they prefer it, and they like that option. And I think we do a good job in Shawnee County of having enough locations, well enough staffed, that meet all of the ADA and other federal Department of Justice requirements that I think it makes a difference that people like voting there. But as you can see, overall, despite 2020, we're still seeing some small increases annually in early voting in the office. We try to make it convenient. We try to make it easy to get in and get out. And most of our engagement with the public has been that they like the way it works, that it's effective, and it's also, I would say we have staff that really know what they're doing, and we've worked very hard to make sure that we're reducing the number of provisionals as part of that process too, and I'll show you those stats here in just a moment as well. Again, we expect the growth to continue. We typically run a little bit later hours for a presidential because just the sheer volume of up to 1,000, we've had as many as almost 2,000 people a day, so we're able to handle it because it's spaced out throughout the entire day. And we think that we're more effective because we have enough people there and enough processes in place to effectively handle people. So those are just kind of the trends. As you can see, they're trending up slightly. We did have an anomaly in the primary of 2022. I think we all got surprised with the Supreme Court and the interest from the public. I don't expect it to be quite that high. That was a little bit of an unusual situation, I would guess. But again, a lot of this is projections. They tend to change over time as the facts on the ground or the campaigns themselves change. So again, just some more numbers for you here. Increased use of advanced voting, both mail and early through the office. I think these will continue to drive some costs for the office. The continued use of early voting as well as mail, I expect will be up some. I don't expect it to begin to reach the 2020 numbers unless we have another pandemic. Because people were encouraged to use mail in that particular election. The other thing that we've spent a lot of time doing is trying to make sure that our staff knowledge and customer service for the public, quite frankly, the provisional process is a process to make sure that we don't mishandle or that election workers on election day don't mishandle or fail to get somebody a ballot. So we're working at solving the problem on the front end to the extent that we can. And I think other than the primary jumping up so high in 2022, generally you're seeing provisional numbers go down across all elections as a general rule. A lot of that is training and our work internally to make sure that we're reaching out consistently to people to make sure that we're not misunderstanding, maybe an application wasn't filled out correctly. So a lot of that, I think, is just work and time on our part, trying to make sure that we're really getting people handled correctly and reducing those numbers to the extent possible. I expect a little bit of a jump because it is a presidential. We expect higher numbers overall for 2024 in both the primary and the general. But I do think it's a good trend to see that generally those numbers are coming down. You'll notice the big jump actually on the chart in 2022. If you look at the overall turnout, a significant jump in turnout then will drive additional numbers of provisionals. Cost of all ballots continue to rise. Our paper costs are increasing. It's difficult to predict exactly what that's going to look like. So we haven't built in a huge increase, but we do know that the cost is going to continue to go up. The other thing that's difficult to predict, and I'm not anticipating at this point a big jump for this reason, but I guess just a note, 2024 statute is going to be implemented requiring a watermark on all ballots. So we still don't have the implementation information. I don't know exactly how that's going to be executed. At this time, we have not included anything. I just think it's just important for the public and the commissioners to be aware that there's just a lot of unknowns around exactly how that's going to get implemented. So just a note for that. Also, it's difficult to predict USPS rates. I did not put a big rate increase in the budget because, again, it's very difficult to guesstimate that. I don't think that will be a huge driver, even though we're going to see probably some increased mail in '24. I think we have enough in the budget to probably handle it. We're going to spend a lot more time this year, I think, doing voter feedback. I think it's important that we gauge the public's happiness and satisfaction with our processes. One of the things I also want to understand from the public is just basically their opinions and thoughts on security. We spend a lot of time in the office making sure that we have secure processes, that we follow the law. I would add that in '22 and '23, both, there were additional requirements for process documentation. Anytime a ballot moves in the office now, there's a piece of paper that has to go with every one of those transfers. So we have an entire accounting process that occurs when we receive the ballots from the printer, as well as when they get taken to the various forms of voting. Both judges have to sign off and count them. Internal staff has to count them for mail purposes. Internal staff and election workers have to count them for early voting slots as each one gets slid. So there's a lot more accounting. There's a lot more documentation that goes with each one of those ballot handling processes, and that's a new statute that's driving that. We continue our practice of contacting voters with advanced mail ballots at least 3 times to remedy any problems or questions. We've always done that, but it is a state law, so we're continuing that. Again, I'm spending a lot more time talking about voter security procedures and processes. And I think it's important that we spend a lot more time talking to the public about some of the information that's out there. And I pretty much take any request I get to talk to a group, because I think it's important to answer questions for people to feel a connection with the office and to know that we're taking those concerns seriously. Additionally, the national standard for voter wait times is 30 minutes. We have always tried to hit 15. I've done a little bit of digging into it, and we're going to continue to do a little more deep dive with voters in '24, as well as late '23, just to make sure that we are doing a better job, I think, of documenting the amount of wait time that occurs at each of the locations throughout each of our processes. So I expect to spend a little bit of time and effort on that. It's pretty rare in my experience to see anybody have a 5-minute wait. So I think we're hitting our 15-minute target most of the time. But that's our goal, and that's how that compares to the national standard. We have 6 staff members currently in professional development. The SERA program is actually a great training and professionalism process that we've sent a number of our people through. Both Jay and Mickey in our office are graduates, and they're both very, very good at what they do. We're lucky to have them. They do excellent work. They really and truly know what they're doing. So driving those 2 departments with people who've been through the training, as well as just have been at it for a long time and are very good at what they do. We're thankful to have them, but I'm also thankful to commissioners letting us do some training and comparing security protocols and communication ideas with other counties across the nation. We have 2, like I said, those 2 department managers have graduated, and we still have, I think we have at least 2 members who are underway with their process, and I think there may be a couple more starting. So we're going to have several more well underway and a couple graduating fairly soon as well. We also continue to host and put on training at the election office for the benefit of local interested groups, other counties, and tours for the legislature from time to time. So typically, if we get a request from the Secretary of State or the legislature or League of Women Voters, we do try to get people familiar with the processes and procedures and make sure that people have an understanding of the immense amount of time and effort that it takes. I think the one thing that surprises me in doing those presentations is how few people understand that Republicans and Democrats of both parties, typically not office staff, but locally appointed people from both parties, are really a part of almost all of those processes. So it's bipartisan, and each of those security processes involves multiple people. Budget request highlights. Just to, I guess, just kind of go over some of the things that have been changing and continue to change. We are still in the process of replacing ASME which is the county IT department with Modus Election Management. We're hoping to wrap, I'd say 95% of that up this year. But we're very happy with Modus and its ability. We think long-term it's going to allow us to be a little bit more efficient. And additionally, we think it will help with IT not having to really spend as much time with our department, and then they can focus on other priorities that I know they have as well. So we are in the process of the full implementation. There's a couple of things that they're working on. I think it will take us to at least till the end of the year and partly into next year to really verify that it works correctly. I would add, we've tried very hard to save taxpayer dollars by partnering with a number of other counties for some of those changes and implementations. So as a result, we've saved a number of taxpayer dollars in the way that we've partnered with those other counties. So that is an ongoing expense that is included in the budget. Building maintenance and repair funding request for 24, just to note, that's a reduction of 40% from 23. If you've got questions on it, I'll have Jake maybe talk about that briefly if you'd like more information on it. There are just a number of concrete repair and bigger, I would call them bigger, long-term maintenance items that I know would be difficult for Nelda or the other department to handle. We're making big progress on that, but again, that is in there, and if you've got questions on that, we'd be happy to answer those. We are also asking for an OA2 administrative position. We need the position because going forward, and we've looked at it, I feel like our the amount of time that we spent in 22 and additionally mopping up in 23, because we continue to get pulled into lawsuits at both the Secretary of State level and other groups who either need information or I was in a deposition all day one day and then a lot of deposition preparation. I was shocked at the amount of time that it took to organize ballot applications. I think there were more than 50,000 documents that we had to prepare, and we had to make both. And again, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not maybe quite as up to date with how that's done, but I've learned a lot in the last couple of years prepping documents, and basically you have to get both sides, both the county side or the state side as well as the other side, pretty much whatever documents the judge orders. So that takes a lot of time. I would like to get organized on the front end with a lot more of our documents, and that's going to take a significant amount of time to prepare as well as to organize so that when we get hit with CORA requests or lawsuit responses that we've got the documents ready and prepared a lot more than we did last time. So we're looking at staff time, and again, this is all compliance. It's mandated by law. We have to do a timely response to our open records requests. We had so many open records requests in 22 that we actually had to have multiple meetings with Jim Crowell, with some DC law firms, and just simply told them we can't do it. As we got within 30 days of the election day, there just simply wasn't the time to respond fully to all of the requests. So I think what's going to occur in the future is a lot of those firms are going to understand that if they don't ask for those documents at 90 days out and 120 days out, they won't get them. So I'm expecting to be hit at 3 to 4 months out from Election Day a lot more than we have in the past, because I think they were surprised that we just simply said, can't do it, we have to focus on the election. So I guess what I'm saying is going forward, especially in 24, I expect a lot more document requests and lawsuit prep time to be involved. Part of the difficulty is, of course, management overtime at a higher cost is significant enough that I think long-term having a full-time position would actually end up saving money and be more efficient overall. Again, I mentioned USPS rates increasing 5 to 7% is typically what we see. I have not put a big increase in this budget. We've got a small increase in there that we think will probably be adequate, but it's just something that we're monitoring. That is the fast-paced presentation. I'm guessing there's at least a question or two, so we'll be happy to try to answer any other questions.
Andrew, a couple of things. On the OA2 position, you know, we've seen countywide those positions are very difficult to fill. Have you explored the option, instead of doing an OA2, perhaps taking one of your more seasoned election workers and hiring them on an intermittent basis, on kind of an as-needed? Because it seems like some of these things that you're wanting to get done, research for depositions or open records requests and stuff are kind of on an as-needed basis. And is that even a possibility, rather than hiring a full-time employee to take things as they come? I know you've got plenty of work that you can give out. I'm sure the position's justified, but what if you never fill it? That doesn't help anything.
I think my concern with using part-time or temporary help is, quite frankly, there's a lot of security issues around all the documents, number one. A little bit of a security concern. Again, that in and of itself probably wouldn't be a problem. My bigger concern is, though, our file structure in the office is massive, and making sure that people are handling the right documents and getting them prepped correctly would probably be something that we would need a full-time person to do. Additionally, I think what I'm really also trying to do here is set us up for the future with gathering all the documents from the past that typically get requested and putting them in a lot more user-friendly, possibly pre-copied or scanned into the file structure in a different way than they are currently. And that's going to take a great deal of time to do. Again, we'll take it under advisement. We'll look at it a little harder as an option. My gut is that really won't work well, especially if you get into depositions where the documents have to be correct. We have to not miss anything. And I got sucked into a lot of late nights trying to make sure that happened correctly. And I'll be honest with you, it scared me a little bit trying to make sure that I didn't miss a document, because I'm raising my right hand and swearing this is it and it's perfect and it's correct. And, it's not to be trifled with, I guess.
Well, I know you just have a lot of, folks that have been working with you guys for a long time on a very limited basis. I mean, I don't know how frequently those people want extra hours or would like to come in when it's not, election season, and help out. So it might be worth looking at. But
Okay.
the other thing, and this is just more out of curiosity, I mean, you can't affect the U.S. Postal Service rates, but has there ever been any effort to make it that, advanced ballots they don't need postage? I mean, it seems like something that the federal government ought to waive postage on advanced ballots.
We actually do pay for the ballots coming back. Am I right? I know we do. I'm just trying to think how to explain it. So it's always been a Shawnee County position, and I think there's some logic to it. It's not ridiculously expensive. I mean, it's several $1,000s, but it's not ridiculous. So we've always just paid it. I think it's a service to the public to not have to go figure out if the stamp's right or the amount's right and those kinds of things. It'd be fine with me if the federal government wanted to cover it. I think you'd have some argument from some people about that, though, too. There are counties that do not cover it. There are some counties that actually require people to put a postage stamp on it if they want it to get to us. So I think that's kind of a policy issue that I haven't really been willing to change. I guess as much as anything, it's also up to commissioners, too, if they want to change it. I don't know that I recommend that, because we've always done it, so it's going to look like a step backwards if it isn't funded.
Okay, yeah, and I'm not asking for that, just
Okay.
to be clear, but also with the postage, I know that, I get my voter registration card. Are we required to send those out at the frequency in which we do?
I would say that we've done a few mailings that we're not absolutely required to. We're required to send basically one a year for sure. But one of the things that I think is important for election security is to be a little bit more aggressive. Don't do it twice a month, but I like doing at least every 6 months some type of mailing, because I think it's important to try to kind of stay up on lists One of the big concerns of the public currently is to make sure that we don't have people hanging out unnecessarily. If we know they've moved, doing an NCOA or just a mass mailing is really good policy because you're able to keep lists a lot more clean. I think one of the risks that you take, we have a fairly mobile population here. And if you don't stay fairly well on top of those lists, where the public gets concerned, and I understand this logic, is if your total people registered is too high, then you're going to have a lot of people who are on the list that shouldn't be, and that raises a lot of red flags. And we do have a lot of people in the community that look very carefully at that and start looking at ratios, and a number of testimonies over to the legislature were really about various counties and how high those numbers, total numbers of people that vote versus people who are registered. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to cut it up.
Right.
But I would be cautious about doing any less than we currently are, just because I know it's significant expense. I'm also worried about balancing that with making sure that we keep our voter rolls as clean as possible.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question about the election office express voting, vote replacement, the ADA. How does that work? What do they do? I'm just not familiar with it.
Our express vote machines is kind of what you're talking, the
Yeah.
electronic screen, those are required by federal law, so we make sure that we have at least one at every polling place. We have a number of them in the office. I think we have 10 to 12 on a typical election. And we allow people who do not necessarily need it for ADA purposes to also use it. So there are a number of people that like it. The screen actually can be brightened or darkened. The text can be white or black. You can change backgrounds. You can change the font size, so people who have low vision.
Is it just a touch screen type?
It's a touch screen, but it actually prints out a paper ballot you can review when you're done. So it still ends up being a paper ballot in the end. But yeah, it's a touch screen. It also has a number of different interfaces. You can use a joystick, you can use a sip and puff, depending on your disability and how you prefer to use it. There are a number of different options for that.
All right. And then the cages that you use.
Yeah, our CIP request included cages because we're trying to anticipate equipment wearing out over the next 2 to 4 years. Again, that may need to, it's a policy question on your end as to how to pay for it. It may need to be bonded indebtedness. I don't know the best way to actually plan for that. I think we're just trying to communicate that our 10 to 12 years will be up here fairly quickly on the existing equipment. Do you want to address that, Jake, for a second? You think of anything else I'm not mentioning?
Commissioner, your question regarding the cages, we have other counties that are typically, that are already implementing those. So when they ship things out from their election office to the polling places, they know that all the equipment is together. It's all locked in there. It would not be unlocked until by the judge that morning. And so we are anticipating that we think, we're trying to read the tea leaves a little bit and see that we think that's the trend of where the legislature may be going in the future. And so that's why we included those in our CIP request, and we're looking at that as in 2026, because we've worked with our manufacturer right now with the equipment that we have, and we're looking at what their recommended life cycle is for that equipment, the express vote, the ADA device that you just spoke of, the DS200 ballot tabulation machines, the poll books, so that we are out in front. The last thing we want is to try to stretch this too far and then all of a sudden start to deal with a catastrophic equipment failure with an election coming. And we're also looking at the time when it would be the right time for us to put out an RFP for this equipment, then also receive the equipment, be able to do all the testing we want to do, and get it ready for the field within election cycles moving forward.
Thank you.
Commissioner,
Yes.
could you go back one slide? I'd like to ask about this building maintenance item. We met and talked about, the maintenance, who handles, what facilities handles, what your department handles. And I think what we kind of came to an agreement on was that we'd look at it similar to a tenant-owner situation. If it's something an owner would normally handle, then facilities will handle it. If it's something a tenant would normally handle, then your office would. When I'm looking at these things you have listed here, concrete repair, drainage improvements, tree removal, to me, those are not tenant items, those are more owner items. Am I misreading this?
If you don't mind,
or
I'm probably going to
misunderstanding?
let Jake address this because I know he's a lot more familiar with the
Okay, that
details.
sounds good, thank you. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
No, absolutely, and I know that in the time, we've also had conversation about some of those things that are the final, we'll say, I guess the conclusion of the discussion was, get it taken care of, try to get it done. And that's what we're always looking at, is trying to get these items done. And so with the money that the commission approved last year for the 2023 budget, that we had to be, that wasn't previously allocated for our office, was to be able to make those kind of necessary maintenance and repair situations. The one that you brought up about concrete and drainage, both, part of that, both of those apply to the IT server room in our basement of our facility. That has taken on water multiple times, and so,
Really isn't elections issue as much as IT issue, right?
well,
Well, so you were given money for this for '23 budget as a one-time,
right, that money was given in '23, and that's where we, at this point, we are halfway through the year, approximately, 6
Right.
months through. At this time, we have essentially spent the money from 2023. And when I say essentially, I mean from what we've actually had paid out versus work that's been done, bids that have been given, and projects that were going to be done. We feel that we will have all of the work done that we have the money for by September.
so you're saying it was too short? Because that was for a one-time payment, right? One-time add to your budget to get those things done. So now.
I
you're
didn't take
adding-
it as a one-time payment, I'll say that. I figured that would be something ongoing. We all do ongoing maintenance on every building. We do ongoing maintenance on our homes. And so I
Well-
figured this amount was larger because there hadn't been any done for so many years, yes.
Okay, but there again, these items look to me like they would be more owner items instead of tenant items. I just want us to have a clear dividing line on what is the responsibility of facilities and what is the responsibility of the department. And I think what we want to try to do, commissioners, for your information, what we want to try to do is get something that's consistent, you know, with the, not only elections, but the health department and, you know, other places too, just so we have some kind of a understanding.
Well, and I mean, I've been with the county for 2 years, and I know at one point, from what I've been told, the county had a plumber on staff. The county had their own electrician on staff. And by us not having those positions right now, we would be reaching out to somebody else to provide bids to do that kind of work. All we've done is reach out to companies, get bids, and then have them do the work. I'm not out there pouring concrete. I don't care for it that much. But I see-
Andrew might do it, though.
I would try to talk him off
He's
the
doing
ledge.
drywall, I know that. But
That was years ago.
So this is not for items that facilities would handle? This is just for tenant items that you would handle?
A tenant can handle them. I mean, that's entirely up to what the commission wants to do. I know we've had some discord on that, and I'm obviously not trying to argue about anything. We're just trying to fix things for the facility that needed to be done. We were granted the money to be able to do so, and we've taken the ball and ran with
The
it.
underlying question is it's not that it's deferred maintenance that's not necessary. Your question is it an item that goes under facilities management for this amount? And I don't know that you're even really questioning the reduction from 50,000 to the reduced amount now of
30.
25?
25,000.
30,000.
Or 30,000, thank you.
Oh, am I looking at the wrong place?
Nope, 25,000 was what
25.
amount requested under that
Oh,
amount.
okay, I
Yeah.
thought it was
So,
30,
but
my
going from
bad.
50,000 to 25,000, it's not that necessarily you're questioning the 25,000 in
No.
facilities upkeep and deferred maintenance. It's, the question is that a responsibility of the elections office in doing that?
Right.
Or is that the responsibility of facilities
So-
management? And if facilities management isn't able to do it because if they're stretched and doing other projects, could it be done by the elections office? But again, keeping clear boundaries of, is this a owner's responsibility, commission, or is this a tenant's responsibility, elections?
Elections, yeah.
Right.
And I think that's the bigger question is not necessarily the amount, but under whose job ledger should it be? So I understand the question.
Well, absolutely, and obviously, that's up to the commissioners to decide that.
Okay, last question from me. In looking at your CIP requests, you know, it seems you've got over $3 million of requests in the year 2026. And some of these are large, you know, the express vote, you've got 170 machines. You know, is that something that we would be better suited to maybe stretch out over a couple of years rather than, I mean, right now your CIP request for this year is $24,000 and then in 2 years it's $3 million. I mean, it's gonna be a heavy lift in 2026 if that's
Right.
how it stays, so.
No.
1,000 is appraisal.
Yeah, they don't have any this year.
Am I looking at the wrong? Oh, that's the appraiser. Okay, so yeah, you've
They don't
got,
have any till 26.
yeah, you've got nothing this year.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So I think a couple of things. Typically, when you're replacing an entire election system, because it's a suite of items, which is really what this is an entire election system. We think it's growing near to the end of its life, and one of my concerns with the existing system is we've done some upgrades that were required, and I think they're going to tax our DS200, which is kind of the workhorse of the system. So I'm trying to communicate what I think is possible. I won't say that it has to be done in '26, but I would be worried if we did not, because the machines are getting older. I think what a lot of people forget is, as we're doing our testing, we do an internal test to make sure that we believe it's correct. We do an additional test to make sure that the public gets to see that it's correct. And then we actually do, I think it's both pre and post testing. So there's about, every time we run an election, we're using the equipment 4 or 5 times, hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of times, every time there's an election, and that's typically 2 to 3 times a year. So the equipment gets a lot more of a workout, I think, than people realize. If you stop and think about it, you know, the treasurer's office has to handle transactions throughout the year. We have to handle all our transactions with every voter in the county on one day. So we're wearing the equipment out over every 10 years. And then its ability to handle changes and software changes degrades over time. So you get the servers that the actual report comes out of and all the data that it handles. I guess what I'm saying is it's a county policy question. How do you want to handle purchasing equipment? When do you think the timing is right? It really needs to be purchased together as a system. We're approaching that time when we at least probably need to start having that conversation. So I would call this an initial conversation document. We would anticipate that we would need to do it as an RFP process to make sure that we're looking at all options and making sure the county's getting the best possible purchase. I know in the past it's been done as a bond over, I don't know, 8 or 10 years, something like that.
15.
Maybe 12, 15, okay.
But the expected life in order to bond something, the expected life of that equipment has to be 10 years old, at least 10 years.
okay.
So as much as anything, I consider it a conversation. I do think the need is serious enough that really needs to be a serious conversation over the next year or two. I think that's part of why we've started talking about it.
Can I ask a quick question about that, just tying in with this? I know the poll books only have an expected life of 5. Do the poll books change based on what your election system is, or would it make sense to get them more in an off cycle?
I
It's not
believe,
as
yeah, it's a good
expensive, but-
question. I think the poll books, the bigger concern with the poll books at the moment is battery life. So what we don't yet know is how long the batteries will last. And as we get closer with these poll books, part of the reason we went to these poll books is the manufacturer and the knowing poll book would only guarantee a life cycle of 4 years. That was it. And then it's time to buy new ones no matter what. We thought that was too short, and so these are designed to potentially go as far as 8 to 10 years. But what I don't know is battery costs, what they will be at that time, whether they'll just need to be replaced. I know that ES&S has said that they think 7 to 8 years is very realistic, but they're not sure exactly how long the batteries last. So I think when we get closer, we will probably do a little more analysis as to whether it's reasonable to get another 3 to 4 years extension with a battery replacement and what the cost for that is at that time. So it is possible that those could be separated out, and that could be an additional 3 to 4 year extension. I don't know the answer to that yet. But as much as anything, we're just trying to have the conversation early and start kind of running down some of those assumptions and trying to figure out as we get closer what's realistic and what's possible.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
On the poll books, is that something that they would have to all be purchased at one time, or is that something that could be set up so that you purchase so many every year and replace so many every year, as long as the software is the driver?
The danger with getting different versions of a poll book is you're actually, you begin to get into software and what will load, what won't, what its capacity is, those kinds of questions. I would say it's possible, but I would call it doubtful. I understand it would be nice to sort of.
I was thinking like PC refresh, you know how you do so many.
I do.
Every year. That was why I was asking.
Because they're used system-wide and they have a lot of same-day uses, you got to be careful about making sure that the software is the same and functions the same. I think that's one of those things, as we get a lot closer, we'll know a lot more, so we'll try to keep you apprised of what we're seeing and what we think and communicate as we get closer. I guess I'm hedging on the poll book a little bit because I think it is possible we may get 8, 9, or 10 years at the far end of it, and that is Jake's squirming, so you know that's pushing it. But I think we're going to try. We're going to see how close we can get, what we think is realistic as we get closer to try to make sure we're not spending money unnecessarily.
Any other questions? Well, we've exceeded the 30 minutes.
Okay.
All right, well,
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thanks.
Andrew, Jake. Let's move right on to the next department, Treasury Department. Larry?
Good morning, Commissioners. Larry Moss, Shawnee County Treasurer. Before I begin, let me introduce Christy Huffman. Christy is Tammy, everybody knows Tammy, Tammy's right-hand person. She handles the day-to-day supervision and training of our clerical staff. Been with the county, 20 years? 26 years. She doesn't look old enough to be here 26 years, but first time probably in 20 years that Tammy has not been to a budget meeting, and that's by design a little bit, and I'll talk about that. The budget that we're submitting today is a flat budget, and I say that in that it's flat in that we don't have any new items in there. It's not flat with the amount of dollars. It's roughly $25,000 additional from last year. Of the $25,000, $24,000 is driven by wages, which represent 93.5% of our budget. And of course, that is driven by resolutions that the Board of County Commissioners have approved on wages. So you understand that better than I do, probably. There's about $1,000 that we have included in the other increase in the other 6%. Of that 6%, all but about 0.5% of that is mandated by statute. So we're going to do that whether we like it or not. And that's only if you consider buying pencils and paper and ink as a discretionary item. That's the one item I think is discretionary, if you can use that term. Running an office without paper and ink maybe isn't discretionary. So that represents an increase of about $1,500. And we included that because while we have contracts with the majority of that, we have to pay fuel surcharges for our Loomis contract. So we included some $1,000 or so for increase in fuel. Other than that, this is a flat budget. We're not anticipating any great changes in the treasurer's office, just trying to keep doing what we've been doing because we think we've been very successful. Having said that, I think 2024 is going to be an interesting year for the treasurer's office in that Tammy Teff, my long-term deputy treasurer, who has served 4 different treasurers over more than 25 years, has announced that she's planning on retiring next year. So having said that, we have sat down and developed a succession plan, not succession, and we'll be working on that for the rest of the year and into 2024. I don't think you can replace a Tammy Teft in that kind of institutional knowledge. But I do believe if we are successful with our plan, that we will finish 2024 with a better workforce, more knowledgeable workforce, and be able to just continue the good service that we've provided the taxpayers. Of the 7 employees that we have on staff, I believe that 5 will probably be doing a different job this time next year, or being prepared to do a different job. And I think this brings us something that we've been trying to achieve, at least for the 11 years I've been on the job, is diversity and cross-training, so that we have more flexibility and we have a better knowledge of the overall operation, and therefore can provide make better decisions and provide better service. So having said that, I'll open it up to any questions that you might have.
Questions? Staffing, are you able to fill all the lanes? And,
We've had an opening for most of the year, having trouble filling that. I was hoping with the new increase that we'd get some more candidates. We thought we had a couple, even one that was transferring from another treasurer's office. And we came close, but we missed, and it was all about dollars. So yes, we're still struggling with that, but we're making do.
Any other questions? Well, thank you, Larry.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Christie, thank you. Hearing and now facility management. And,
Yeah, I'm kind of messing with your system here. I'm taking the clerk's position because she was out today. So thank you for letting me step in for her place. So as the mission statement reflects, we are here to make sure that these buildings are kept in a clean and safe environment for the use of the staff and for the public. Here's a list of my staff. The biggest change this year was Don Bell was stationed at the health department at J.P. Lewis. He has been restationed over at the courthouse. And with that change, he has taken on not just the health department buildings, but the elections office and the administrative services building. We have also added a maintenance tech at the North Annex. His name's Darren Nelson. He is there to train under Brent Smith, who has indicated that he will probably be retiring here in the next year. So we are anticipating a little bit of change there. Custodial-wise, as you can see, I have quite a list of custodians. We have been able to change from temp agency staff to actually Shawnee County personnel in the custodial department. Every one of those listed, except for Austin Anderson, came as a quick staff employee, and after they reached their 480 hours, chose to come onto the county. We still do have 3 people listed. 2 of the 3 are part-time, Odessa and Eric Jones. They clean the health department buildings. They do it after hours. So they have a full-time job during the day and then come and work for us part-time in the evenings, which we really appreciate. John Carroll is a full-time quick staff employee. He is indicated that once he reaches his 480 hours, he wants to come on with the county. So that would be, we would be fully staffed custodial-wise. As you can see, I have one custodian open position. I still have my open building supervisor position and my open office assistant 2 position. So the facility served, as you can see, a nice long list of buildings, and we are surviving. Some days get more interesting than others. So past, present, and future. So in the past, just I want to let you know, we completed the renovations of the 707 building for the administrative services offices, and we've completed the updating of the Manor Conference Center lighting. We've done some cleanup around Old Fire Station 5 to kind of get the Virginia creeper off the building and clean up the trees, try to make it look a little bit more lived in. Emergency repairs to the judge's parking lot. So far, so good. Knock on wood. It looks like it's working. We haven't had any issues with flooding or anything like that. And then North Annex had some interior paint refresh. Present, the things we are working on currently, roof replacement for the extension office, roof replacement for this building. During the construction, there was some damage done to the roof. We've had some leaking, and with the parking lot and roof account that we can pull from, we're going to go ahead and put the roof on this building this year. We're meeting with the architects this week to start the design and construction of, or the design of that for bidding. And then we are currently working on the courthouse renovation. I would like to make a comment publicly how awesome everybody has been to work with in the courthouse. I know going in, everybody was just like, nope, this is not going to happen. But as we've worked through, and everybody has just pitched in and has just really done a great job. If there's questions or concerns, they come ask, and we work through it. So it's been going well. The future, what we're looking for is the courthouse restroom renovations. As we kind of close down the courthouse project, we're going to gear up restrooms and get those renovated and updated, and the courthouse elevator cab refresh. So on my proposed budget, pretty much across the board increases. A lot of that has to do with just getting hammered this year with cost increases from people we work with. The material increases, the staff, the wage increases for everybody we work with. It's just hitting me hard. I have to say that last year, we ended the year with $26,000 left in my budget, which is pretty tight. We took that money and rolled it to the courthouse project. This year is kind of running about in that same line. If we end up in the $25,000 to $26,000 left, I'll count it as a win. So 24, I've kind of asked for more money, just because right now I'm still running the department on basically salaries that are of unfilled positions, and that's just a little tighter than I want to run. So I'm hoping that you'll give me the increase straight across. And then for my CIP requests, I really didn't have anything for this year until we started replacing the windows in the courthouse, and the request for blinds has come up. So we put in the courthouse window coverings as a CIP request. Once the project's completed and they're done tearing up the lawn, we'd like to go in and replace the landscaping and irrigation that has been torn up through the project. Last year, you funded the courthouse restrooms. It was as a 5-year request. We'd like to continue that request into this year. And then looking ahead, the elections office really could stand a carpet replacement. The janitors have carpet, we bought carpet shampooer to shampoo the carpets down there, and we're trying to stay up on this stuff, but as you have heard from the elections office, they have a lot of traffic, and a lot of traffic means a lot of dirt. So we would put in the request for the carpet replacement in a couple of years. This building could stand a window replacement. It's something to consider, something to look into. And then also the North Annex would be due for carpet replacement in about 2027. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. We are way saving money having the on-call electrician than having one on staff. And I could say that pretty much all the way across the board. We have an on-call MEP, but we also have a staff member that can do with a lot of those items, maintenance items, and we've been able to keep budget costs down because of that. So the health department communicates with us, and we have not had any issues with them. We've been able to do what they need to have done in a timely manner and keep up on their concerns and their building
So
issues.
if we were to talk to the health department, they're going to say things are going great at the building there.
I mean, do we have hiccups? We had a hiccup this morning. But we address them as we find out about them, and we get them taken care of. I would say our response times are usually within 24 hours. And if it's an emergency, the guys are there. I know that last weekend, I think it was, all three of my guys were out working. Two were in the courthouse working, dealing with an issue here. One was over at Manor dealing with an issue there. I typically have one gentleman on call 24 hours a day, but that weekend I had all three of them here working overtime. So, we deal with it as fast as we can.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah. Bill?
Yes, I'm sorry.
can you go over with us a little bit the window coverings for the courthouse?
The window coverings?
Yes.
So as they're taking out the windows, the original windows to the building, the new windows are a little bit different size in depth. They're deeper, wider frames. When they take out the old windows, they have to take out the window coverings that are existing, and we can't replace them because of the size and change of the windows. Also, too, the frames are wider. I mean, the windows are changing in size, even though the openings aren't changing. The window that's going back in is different size than the original window. So even though the windows have a tint on them, and the main difference is that the heat gain element is in the argon gas between the panes. So they're not a heavy tint like what you currently see on the courthouse. It's a lighter tint. They are tinted. We have the argon gas. They are a dual pane window. The frames are thermally broke. So we don't technically need window coverings, but we are getting requests for window coverings because people feel that they can be seen after hours. So the budget amount I had requested would basically be putting this type of a window covering in. It's a solar shade. It lets visibility in and out, and they're fairly durable, and they do a really great job of blocking any solar gain that gets through the window. But it is a request by a few departments that have had the windows changed out to have some type of screen or window covering put back on the windows.
But as I understand it, there is a tint, but the tint is lighter than some of the windows currently have now?
Yes, the tint is lighter,
So
yes.
it is brighter in their offices or
Not
something?
so much direct sunbright, no. The concern about the window covering is the visibility, that you can actually see somebody, just clearly see into the window. But there is definitely a tint difference. I hope that you would have time to go over and take a look. The windows are gorgeous. I mean, the view out the windows is just amazing right now. The heat gain, you don't get the heat gain that you currently get off of the windows. You can stand next to them and not feel a heat gain. It's amazing. They are on third floor, so you can go see, without going into an office. They're finishing up third floor this week on the west side. They'll be moving to the east side next week.
On the capital improvement, the courthouse landscaping and irrigation, that's not part of our project budget for the courthouse?
For the courthouse project?
Yes.
No. We did not include it mainly because the irrigation has not worked, was not working when I came to the county. And instead of expending the money at that time, we knew the project was coming, and we knew that there would be a lot of maneuvering around the building, that I was going to hold off until after the project was over. But a large part of the irrigation system is not functioning, either through broken lines, broken heads, just,
So your $150,000 is for the irrigation, not for the landscaping?
and landscaping, minor landscaping.
But is landscaping part of the bid?
No,
Okay.
neither were part of the bid.
And we did not include the restroom renovations as part of our courthouse renovations?
No.
Okay.
No, I asked for that last year for the first year, and we're finding that it is very much needed. There are some plumbing lines that are failing in the building that we need to, we will need to address.
So there are some funds that have been set aside for that from 2023.
Yes, you funded the first year of my request last
Yeah.
year. And we have enough we have enough funds now that I can start design and look at overall budget and impact on the courthouse prior to the project, the renovation project finishing, with the hopes that we could start working on that once the project's finished.
And we did not replace the windows here when we moved in,
No,
but it's your advice that we would replace them now.
yes. My advice would have been probably replace them at the time, but it was budget issue that we did not. The windows are a single pane. We are having some problems with some leaking, and we are having really, really bad heat gain off of them. We have one case, in one of the offices upstairs, the thermostat is directly across from the window, and at any given time when the sun's shining, that thermostat could be reading over 100 degrees.
I think that thermostats have been a problem in the whole building, and lack of control of thermostats have been a problem. I would really like us to look into addressing that lack of control for our thermostats. That's been an issue here.
All right.
I have a
Yeah.
quick,
Yes.
ask a quick question. So for the restroom renovations, I know you have 75,000 from 2023's cap outlay. When do you foresee being able to start using that money?
Like I said, I have the funds that we have set aside now. I can hire an architect for design and to start looking at design and the budget and the future costs. We just received bids back for a bathroom remodel in the EOC, and it was double the original estimate. And then granted, the original estimate was pre-COVID. So I'm hoping that here towards the later part of this year, we can start that process with design and budgeting, or looking long-term at what the cost impacts would be to do all the restrooms.
I guess so my question is, when, I know you requested another 75 in 2024.
I've actually requested it for the
year.
next 4 years.
Right, but I'm
Yes.
just asking, would you conceivably be able to spend the money
Not all
in
75,000.
75,000 in 2024?
No. It would be at least another year.
On the restroom remodels, the 75,000, is that just a men's room, just a women's room, or is that a
I
men
would say
and a women per year? or-
Based on what we're seeing from the bid for the EOC, it would be just one. It'd be just a men's restroom.
Okay, and then, you know, I don't know that I've been in every single bathroom in the courthouse, but are they all pretty similar? I mean, are we gonna have to redo the architecture, design from one to the next, or can we just come up with one design and just duplicate it in other areas?
Yes and no. Like down in the basement, the women's restroom has 2 showers. So, yeah.
Makes sense?
I think that was back from the days when the sheriff's office was in the basement, and
Okay.
so the women could go in and shower in the women's restroom.
Sure.
So I would like to take those showers out, put in an additional stall.
Right.
Type of thing. On second floor, we have a need for a larger stall, not just 2 kind of somewhat small stalls. So I would like to reconfigure second floor's women's restroom to give us 2 fairly large stalls with a little bit more accessibility, not a full ADA type accessibility, but a little bit more accessibility for people that have limited mobility. As far as the men's restrooms go, they're all in fairly good shape. Our biggest issue is that the plumbing from the men's and women's tie together. So what we find out on first floor is that if there's an issue in the men's restroom, it ends up reflecting in the women's restroom because it plugs both lines. And so we end up having to go in to both lines. And that's what I'm saying, is a lot of this is not just the actual facelift of the bathrooms. It is some plumbing in the walls that we need to get in and address and clean up some of the plumbing lines.
Do they have a chase, or is it in the walls?
There is a chase. There's a fairly large chase that we could get in and work in on each floor. We also have an issue, we've kind of somewhat resolved it on third floor. We have one judge's restroom that likes to plug quite consistently, but it's not at the judge's, it's more where it ties into the main line further down above the men's restroom. So those are the issues we're facing. It's a little bit of facelift, a little bit of rearranging the restrooms, but a lot of it is going to be internal, the not pleasant part of it, the pipes.
So the restrooms in the judges' chambers, in the courtrooms that we're redoing, are those getting redone?
They're getting, I wouldn't say redone, but they are getting a little bit of a facelift, minor.
Fresh coat of paint and
Yeah.
that kind of thing, okay.
It depends on, every courtroom in this project is being done a little bit differently. It just depends on what's being done in that area. And then if I have budget to allow, I'm supplementing where I can.
The carpet for the elections office, do we really want to replace the carpet during a presidential year?
The
Is that-
money's being asked for, it wouldn't happen at that time.
Okay, I mean, because it says if it's going to be asked for in '24, it has to be done in '24.
It's asked for in 26.
Um,
That's what I'm showing.
I have, okay, maybe I was looking at the wrong line.
Oop, wrong way.
But I also am
Yeah,
not
okay.
showing any
Yeah, I was looking.
restroom renovation until 25. 25, 6, 7, and 8. I don't show any for 24.
You're right.
Yeah, carpet's 26.
You're right, I was looking at the wrong line.
And they do have carpet tiles down there at the elections office, which is similar to what's here. So carpet tiles is fairly easy to replace versus a roll goods. We can do it in sections, so it doesn't have to be like we have to go in and move everybody out and replace it. It could be done in sections as their workload allows.
Do they have replacement squares now, or, you know, if they have worn areas that?
Do they have backups? They
Yeah.
do have a few, yes. But we've had some serious staining, especially in walk traffic areas. That's just almost impossible for our cleaning staff to get out.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Thank you, Nelda.
Thank you.
All right,
Are we ready?
ready.
I believe so.
Good morning, Steve Bauman, Shawnee County Appraiser, and this is the Appraiser's Office 2024 budget request. Probably going to be less complicated. I'm not asking for any restrooms. So jumping right into this, I'm asking for a total increase of $192,822, which is about an 8.8% increase over last year's budget. Most of that is in personnel. And then contractual services has a little bit also. The reason why the majority of that's personnel is because that's the majority of our budget, much like other county departments. It's all in staffing, 95%. Contractual services is 4.7, and equipment supplies is 1.3%. So out of that total increase of 192,000, 113,100 of that are wage changes, just normal wage scale changes. And then we're estimating an increase in our vehicle insurance of about $1,075. And then some succession planning of $78,600. So with that, we have 3 out of the 4 commercial appraisers that are at critical risk of retiring in 2025, if not before. Our office can absorb 1 commercial appraiser leaving at a time, and providing the training necessary to get that person up to speed. 2 would be extremely difficult. 3 would be unrealistic. So adding 1 commercial appraiser starting in 2024 would allow for a training period to minimize that failure risk. And then I'm asking to reclassifying OA2 to an OA3. And this is going to bridge the gap between our support services manager and the OA2 position. So it's going to come with a lot of increased duties, difficulty level, and it will provide some cross-training for those specialized duties. And then my last request for this would be to change our cadastral mapping specialist from a range 8 to a range 9. And this is really in relationship to some compaction issues with the clerical increase that just occurred, to make this compensation accurate. So that's the overall budget request. Again, 192,822 increase total. And then our CIP program, these are for the leased vehicles. They are all funded through a Register of Deeds, Becky Neocy's Land Records Fund. 24 and 25 is at 24,000. That jumps up to 30 and 26. That's still an estimate at this point. We have one vehicle that's not leased that is still operating fine. I forecasted a need to replace that in 26. So hopefully that holds out, and maybe it'll go another few years after that. Not sure, but I'm planning for it. So be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
No? I'd like to go.
Yeah, that's good. All
Okay.
right. Well, with that, thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
It was easy.
Controlling this? All right. Well, good morning. I'm Becky Neocy, Register of Deeds. Thank you for listening to my presentation today. I'll start out with our mission statement. We're here to serve the public and preserve the records of real estate-related transactions with professionalism and courtesy to all of our constituents in a fiscally responsible way. We record mainly real estate documents, also UCC filings, tax liens, military discharge documents. We are the genesis of the county tax roll records, help keep those straight, and the beginning of it before it goes on to the county clerk, the GIS department, the treasurer. But we also help with business and residential development and title abstracts so that those homeowners know that they own that property when they receive it. And we're required to record documents immediately, so we take that very seriously. The good thing is that we do not have a backlog. If you call some of the larger counties, you might find out that they're 2 weeks behind in recording. We have kept up to date in the time I've been here. And since 2013, just a rundown, we've streamlined operations. We have converted 2.6 million images from microfilm to digital. Staff has over 40 years of experience. That's been cut in half this past year. We lost a longtime employee, but still have a lot of experience in our office. And thank you for allowing us to add a new staff member in 2022. We actually do have a vacancy right now, so we're running a little busy right now. This is our busiest time of the year, and when your staff is cut by 25%, that's a big loss, but hopefully we'll get to fill that pretty soon. So we're recording anywhere from 80 to 200 documents per day, which is quite a bit. 28,492 in 2022. It's come down a little, but we're still staying busy. We have to examine. We check for probably 20 different things on a document when we receive it. Make sure that it's accurate. We index it, we audit it, check all those things again, check all the indexing. If it's paper, we have an additional processes to handle that paper, stamp it, scan it, all that. And we may reject it. It's actually more work when we have to reject something. We document it and send a letter back and everything. So then we're doing the same process again when it comes back to us. Where e-recording was at 35%, we're now at 75%. And like I said, the additional staff member in 2022 has been a great help. I'm asking for a decreased budget this year because we did lose a staff member that was at a higher pay scale. So this will be the first time when, even with the wage increases overall, we will be asking for a decreased budget this year. Thanks to our partner, Fiddler Technologies, we have a lot of great enhancements on our software. They just revamped our property fraud alert, which is becoming a big concern to a lot of people. We are seeing an uptick of fraud. They revamped the website, made it much more user-friendly. They've added text message, so you can choose between a text message, a phone call, or an email. They've added Spanish alerts. And they've also allowed for when they receive that phone call, it'll be my voice that is making that call, so they're not concerned that it is a fraudulent call coming in. And I'll talk a little bit more about that property fraud alert on the next slide. But we also have Inspect, which is OCR technology, which allows us to index items. When we click on it, it digitally will read it. And Condor is our backup insurance in case we should get behind because of one issue or another, could even be a disaster. Condor is a contractual service we can ask to step in to help us get caught up. And Laredo Connect, I said last year it was coming soon. It's still coming soon. Unfortunately, they've decided to roll it out a little bit slower than anticipated. They're making sure that they have the support, but that will free up a lot of staff time. We have 26 Laredo customers, those are our subscribers to our service, and we keep track of those payments, make sure they're on time, and so that will help once they get that up and running, hopefully by the end of this year. And as I said, property fraud is becoming an increasing problem. I've worked with law enforcement, district attorney's office, the attorney general's office on cases that they've had. We're talking with the local law enforcement, the TBD, about possible legislation to make property fraud more difficult. Unfortunately, we don't see for property fraud, we see it as fraud, but it's really a serious thing. It is stealing people's homes. And so while it's not a huge problem, we are seeing it. And so we would like to maybe look at 4 levels for legislation, maybe on the initial process, notifying homeowners, asking for IDs when they come in. Of course, we want to do it carefully. We don't want unfunded mandates for the county or additional excess work for the registers, but we would like to find a solution, so we're trying to talk to all the parties that are involved, all the stakeholders. We would like more investigative help because, registers across the state don't have the resources to devote to investigations or video footage. We're fortunate that we have video footage in our office, but many don't across the state. Process for removing names off of property through the courts, that would be a swifter process. Right now, it can take up to 2 years for a case to, get to trial. By that time, the property could have changed hands many times. So, and then increasing penalties. Like I said, it's not a violent crime, it's a white-collar crime. People don't necessarily see it as an issue, but we need to make awareness that it is a big problem, and it's that $30,000 home is somebody's property, and it shouldn't be taken. So I think education is going to be important, and people are getting more educated, knowing not to leave your property vacant for a long time without being watched. You should be if you have a vacant property, you should have somebody watching it all the time. That's what we've seen as people move into those vacant properties here in Topeka. That's what we're seeing. And sign up for a property fraud alert. You're going to get that alert immediately when something is recorded. So, any questions before I get into the budget?
This fraud, this kind of interests me. Are we seeing a lot of that in Shawnee County? Or-
It's not a lot. I mean, I could count on one hand in the past 10 years. But in Wichita, it's picking up. So it's probably only a matter of time because the penalties are not as severe as other drug-related or violent crimes. People, unfortunately, criminals are moving to this type of crime.
And what does this usually look like? You said they move into someone's vacant house and then they,
Yeah, start renovating it, and then they try
claim it's
to,
theirs, huh?
I'm sorry?
And then they just claim it's theirs?
Claim it theirs. They try to record a fraudulent deed. My staff is really good at picking up on the clues. I don't want to talk about all of the clues or all the ways
Sure.
they do it. But my staff has been really good about stopping a lot of it. Unfortunately, like I said, our hands are tied as far as we're required to record what's brought to us. And even if we suspect it's fraud, we can't do anything about it except for maybe notifying the homeowner, and that's what we've done in cases like that when we saw, there was fraud involved.
Oh, yes.
So, I know that the city of Topeka started the vacant building registry a few years back, and part of the reason that was put into effect is because a lot of times you can't tell who owns a building. When it's vacant, it changes hands from bank to bank, or to, trust to whatever else.
And you
And
can't
so,
find the entity that owns it.
has that helped at all to have that in place? Because I know a lot of it's the corporate entities that own the vacant properties. So,
I'm not sure, but the Topeka Police Department might be able to answer that. I'm not sure if that's helped or not.
okay,
Yeah.
just curious.
Because I don't have access to that information, but that'd be something to look into.
Okay.
One other question. You said you're switching up a lot, converting microfilm to digital. Is that freeing up a lot of space then when you do all that?
Yeah, we still are required to keep that microfilm, but we stopped making a double copy for the office, so we are not storing that microfilm day forward in the office, which is a good thing because eventually you'd run out of space. But we do keep it off-site. If there's a tornado or a fire at the courthouse, we have we have it off-site in a storage facility. So yeah, it does free up space. Unfortunately, digital space is expensive. We do have I forgot to talk about a program called Bastion, is an off-site server of all of our documents and all of our system. So if there should be some kind of, virus hit or something, then we have the capability to get back online within an hour on a laptop anywhere in the city or anywhere. So we pay for that storage on a quarterly basis, and it's quite expensive, but it's a peace of mind. It's an insurance policy.
Any other questions?
No, just a comment real quick. A negative request is pretty impressive. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yours will be an easy one to do, I would guess, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are your other department heads viewing in, listening to this? Take note.
Well, but you also heard why,
Yeah.
because she
Yeah,
had
that's
someone
right.
that
Sure,
retired
that's
that
right.
was at step 20,
Yeah,
Still.
yeah.
right. It won't be that way next year, so. Our revenues are a little bit down. Like I said, our document volume has gone down this year, so I'm projecting a decrease by about 300,000. It's just a rough estimate, but based on the documents that we've brought in this year, we're seeing a decrease as far as what the county general fund gets. We do have that technology fund that comes in that is also going to decrease a little. But there's our budget request, about $5,000 less than last year. And like I said, that technology fund pays for pretty much all of our software, printers, microfilm. When we do hardware updates, even in the office, we pay for those. Excess money goes to the land records fund. I've been able to transfer 1.2 million over to the Land Records Fund, mostly in GIS and Public Works, IT. So we're glad to be partners with that. We bring in about 200,000 in the technology fund. That'll probably be a little less this year. But also, we bring in Laredo Tapestry Monarch. Those are our user fees, subscription services, and people that, companies purchase our documents. We bring in about 35,000 with that. So that pretty much pays for our software almost all the way, so. And that's about it.
Thank you, Becky. Very good.
All right, thank you.
So, Mark Price, Information Technology. This is our 2024 budget request. As you can see, our requested budget for 2024 is $4,187,951. That is an increase of $146,273.49 from last year. Probably about half of that is coming from our salaries. It is an increase of $72,726. This is not adding any additional employees. It's really just from the wage study increases and step increases. We have had, through this year, 2 vacant employees or vacant positions. We did just recently hire our deputy director position, so really in another month that's going to go down to 1 vacant position. The 1 vacant position we have is a application developer that retired previously. We will be looking at reclassifying that to become I think like a business analyst. I want to put that position under 2 of our app dev project managers. They're not getting close to retirement, but they're probably a 7 to 10 years from where they can retire, and I just want to get someone in there to be prepared to help them out and be prepared if something does happen and they do choose to retire. The other place for an increase came from our contractual services. We had a few different areas that went up. Our actual contractual services went up just based upon increases in costs for renewals, for security software, for our ERP systems. Kind of what we're seeing across the board is just some slight increases here and there. It wasn't even, I don't think it's a 1% increase across the board for that. It was just but it's a significant amount because it does jump out. I also made a change in our travel and accommodations. It looks like a big jump, but really it is, I took it out of our training. What I was seeing is our training costs were actually not showing up as high as I expected, and our travels were up, so I just moved the money as a kind of across the board cleaning up of where we're taking money from. We also had a minor jump in our dues and subscriptions, and then as probably most departments, we had a major jump in our insurance premiums, and that's just the 2023 cost plus 20% as requested by Audit Finance. And our supplies and requests really didn't have a change. I think we've been doing okay there of what we requested and what we've been spending. I didn't see a need to do an increase. And then in our capital request, which is our Nutanix block, Nutanix system, that I changed to reflect what it's actually costing us now. The system we bought this year just had a slight increase in equipment costs, so I added $13,000 to give us what we actually are going to be spending on it. That's what we spent this year on it, and we're able to cover it out of our budget, and just thought I'd get that updated and more appropriate since that is what we are actually spending. We did have 2 CIP requests, but none of them are actually for the year 2024. I went ahead and just included them. One is a continuation of a fiber we were going to be putting in this year to the health department to continue that to Gage Park, but that's a 2025 request. And then our just kind of regular switch replacements we've been doing out of capital improvement or capital outlay. We don't have any actually till 26 planned, and I don't foresee that needing to change. Then we just have any questions I can answer.
You said you have a fiber optics going to Gage Park?
In 2025, we have a CIP request that would continue a fiber we are going to be putting in this year that goes to the health department at 6 and McVicker. This would be a continuation of that fiber to Gage Park. We currently are being served with a shared fiber with the city of Topeka. As we move closer, I know the city has some fiber projects possibly coming up and trying to work in conjunction with them. They've been very generous of giving us access to fiber, and we've never been charged anything for that access. It's just maintenance and connection fees, or not fees, connection costs of putting in fiber to county buildings. To better serve that area, we would like to get our own fiber because it would give us full control. Right now, we're kind of going through the city's network to get to Gage Park. But that is a 2025 request.
How much was that?
110,000.
110, okay. I just wonder if something like that where it serves Gage Park, if that could be something from there.
I was thinking the same thing. The Gage Park Authority could
Right.
potentially,
That might be something they would
not authority, the Gage Park sales
pay for,
tax.
participate
Yes.
in some fashion,
Could potentially be part of that.
so.
I'll make a note and make sure we, before the
Okay.
submission in 25, we update that or.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
It relates not necessarily to this budget, but capital improvement. It just made me think, since 12th Street is complete now, that project, I know we still have that fiber that we were gonna put in on 12th Street. Did that end up happening, or is that just a project that needs to be gone?
I don't have an answer to that. Now that it is done, I will reach out to Andy Rosebrook from the city of Topeka. When we first started the 12th Street project and adding that fiber, the city engineer was different at that time who was handling that. They moved on to the state, and I've tried to get the answer on whether it was put in. I do live in the area. I noticed they have put a fiber in there. I do not know if it is the one we had, or not a fiber, but a conduit. I don't know if it's the one we asked for or not. So I will get that information and give an update very soon.
Yes.
Mark kind of alluded to it, so I was just going to tell you, whenever he was talking about his contractual services went up, and there's no comment there. Generally, when the ladies reviewed these, if the increase was more than 3%, they made sure that there was a comment as to why it was more than 3%. So, like his line, there is no comment there. That's because it's less than a 3% increase. So just kind of help compare. Also, just to refresh your memory too, that last line on the Nutanix nodes. In the past, when we had these storage
Yeah.
issues, they were capital items.
Yeah.
Well, the way we're handling it now, last year, we changed that to his budget, because it's something is going to be just an operational part of his department every year now. So that's why from the actual, which is 22 to 23, it shows that big jump. And then a smaller jump from 23 to 24.
And just another reminder there is that replaced the V block we had in place. When we put the V block in place, that was a $1.5 million project.
Yeah.
And if you do the math out over 5 years, the 178,000 is a cost savings over what we were getting with, if we would replace it with something like the V block. But that was also, the V block would have been 2012 or 2013 is when we bought it, so I'm assuming the cost for a similar system would have been increased. So going with the Nutanix system we did have found, and is still being a cost savings over how we've been replacing them in the past, and it allows us to do incremental upgrades. We just had one we just ordered. We can put those 3 nodes in, shut down the 3 nodes that are coming up at the end of this year, pull them out, and users will not see any change or any downtime to make that upgrade, where in the past it's been kind of what's called rip and replace. We'd bring in a whole new system, have to migrate everything over to the new system, and then pull out the whole big system. So it is allowing us to do incremental upgrades and renewal of equipment without the major disruption we've had in the past.
Any questions?
But Mark, I know you guys are doing a lot of work over at the courthouse right now with the renovations. And so I guess with that, I'm a little surprised that you're not asking for a whole lot of change in your budget. How are you guys handling, like, doing your regular jobs plus that in addition?
My staff is working very hard. We did hire an intern, intermittent position. With some of the vacant positions we've had, we had extra money, so we've hired an intermittent person to help out with that. We also put, I think it was around $70,000 last year out of our leftover budget, part of it being because we had some vacant positions. We set that aside to help cover the expenses we're having with the courthouse project. I've discussed with Betty as that gets used up, if need be, I might be coming back and begging for some more money, but I think right now, I think we're doing okay on using existing staffing and the money we set aside. I think other departments have been very good to work with on understanding. There's been some times we've had 3 or 4 of our people over there working on redoing cabling, cleaning up cabling that has been put in over the last 30 years. And so sometimes we're not as responsive as I'd like to be. Sometimes you might see me over there helping out because my people are out doing work, trying to keep the jail going or Parks and Rec going, and I'm going over to there because we need to keep the construction project moving. But my staff has been extremely great on picking up and helping out and making sure we can keep everything going and cleaning up the process as we need to.
Great, thanks.
That was my question.
All right, sorry about
Took away
that.
my thunder. Any other questions? Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.